Don't trip, you know? I know things is hard right now. You looking for a job. You out there hustling. Money gonna come your way, just don't trip. You gotta keep your shoes tied. I know you mad at me and everything, just don't trip. I'm hoping I can see a brighter day. I see my daughter gotta spend the night today. Cause I just hit my knees sometimes and pray. And when I wake up, I hear them shots spray. Every day in the hood, it's the same thing. Young niggas in the streets trying to gang bang. Selling crack in them packs trying to maintain.
So I wanted to talk today a little bit about what it was that our contact was with Suge Knight. There seems to be a little bit of confusion about this, and I want to clarify some of the confusion that's out there. First off, I'd just like to say that nobody, and I mean nobody, speaks for me. And if anybody has a question that they want to ask, they need to come to me and ask me. There is nobody out there that speaks for me. I have disassociated myself with people that I've worked with in the past, and they do not speak for me. And I want to talk to you about this current Suge Knight information, and I want to at least spell out for you the contact that I personally had with Suge Knight's camp. Now, years ago, I met Tom Mesereau when I was working in Century City with the Century City News. And so he's somebody that I've known for a long time. I sent him a letter, and it was along with the 45 Tupac Murder Facts. And that was what we started to get traction with the DA's office to reopen the Tupac and the Biggie murders. And when I sent that letter to him, he evidently read it to his client who was in jail. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but somehow he read it to his client that was in jail. I included the Tupac Murder Facts and a copy of the confession letter. Now, I got an email from Thaddeus Culpepper, and that email said, call me, and it was like, I want to say like 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night or something, and I called him right away. And I had a conversation with him, and in that conversation, he relayed to me, who are you guys, and how do you know all of these things? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, Suge Knight verified that this is all true. And so, by this is all true, that means Little Half Dead being the shooter, David Kenner and Reggie Wright and Sharitha being behind the murder. And I'm going to include a screenshot of the email that Russell Poole sent me, along with the attachment that he was at like Office Depot or Staples or one of these places, and he sent me an affidavit. And I'll send you links to the screenshot and to the affidavit that he sent me so that you can see exactly what he wrote, okay? I had this conversation with Thaddeus. I verified the information. He told me that Suge Knight had said that this was true. And I immediately called Russell. I gave him Thaddeus's number, and I had arranged, I said, Thaddeus, Russell Poole is going to call you. And Thaddeus and Russell Poole spoke, and then the very next day, Russell Poole documented his conversation, and he sent me an affidavit of the conversation. And so you can see what Russell Poole said about his conversation with Thaddeus. Now, flip to, there was a press release that was released. It was not released by me. I had nothing to do with writing the press release, and it got picked up in the wire as Thaddeus Culpepper had written an affidavit. Well, that's not true. Thaddeus was not the one that wrote the affidavit. It was Russell Poole that wrote the affidavit. There was another journalist that also spun this and said now that Suge Knight had written an affidavit. Well, that's also not true. Suge Knight did not write the affidavit. The affidavit is written by Russell Poole. And that was something that Russell Poole and I were working on. And we had Suge Knight convinced that the best way forward for him was to talk about the murders of Tupac and about Biggie and to make a full statement. And our job in that was to convince the DA's office and the sheriffs that they needed to dump this case that's crumbling now against Suge Knight, and they needed to go after solving the two murders that were going to make the department shine. Now, obviously, we got our answer because Russell Poole went to that meeting and Russell Poole died. And we'll get into more of that later. But I really wanted to, first off, say nobody speaks for me but me, and also give you guys a little bit of information about the affidavit that was written by Russell Poole. I'm going to include links in the notes so you guys can go look at the screenshot of the email that Russell Poole sent me, and you can also see a copy of what Russell Poole had written at either it was, I want to say Staples or Office Max or Office Depot, one of those places. And you'll see it in the email, and you can see exactly what Russell Poole said. And this whole thing about this being a target on Suge Knight only is BS. This was a target of Suge Knight and Tupac. Suge Knight was not the only target, and I have never said that he was. And so this is a lie that's being put out. It's disinformation, it's irresponsible, and it's not coming from me. Suge Knight was not the only target that night. Both Suge Knight and Tupac were going to be in the car. The confession letter says that Suge Knight and Tupac were both targeted, and that Reggie Wright Jr. had gone to this gang summit to get permission to take them both out. There were two shooters that were selected for Suge, and there was one shooter that was selected for Little Half Dead. So anybody that's wondering why, the bullets really got Tupac but they didn't get Suge, two shooters were selected for Suge. One of their guns jammed, the other one got off 2 shots, and those 2 shots evidently did not hit the mark. And so Suge and Tupac were both targets that night, period. It wasn't just one of them being targeted, it was both of them being targeted. There were 3 shooters that were in the car that were there to take out Suge and Tupac. The shooter that was there to take out Tupac got off 12, 11, 13 rounds, whatever the number is, and some of those rounds actually ended up hitting Tupac. But they learned something when they went to plan the Biggie Smalls murder, and that was to use armor-piercing rounds, because a lot of those rounds get stuck in the car and car doors and what have you, and metal stops bullets. I mean, it's just that simple, unless you have armor-piercing rounds. So I hope this clarifies some of the confusion, and I hope everybody out there knows I have never said that Suge Knight was the only target that night. That is disinformation, that is a lie, and it's not something that's ever come from me. Suge Knight and Tupac were both in the crosshairs that night, and I hope that this clarifies this. And anybody that wants to know anything from me, don't ask anybody else. Come to me. And that's the whole beauty of this crowdsource the news concept. Because if you want to know what's going on in Australia, you don't ask somebody that's down in South Africa or South America. You ask people that are in Australia. If you want to hear what's going on in Houston right now, ask people that are in Houston. Don't ask somebody that's in New York or somebody that's in Los Angeles. Get your information from the source. The closer you get the information from the source, the better it will be. And this probably clarifies what I wanted to clarify tonight, and there'll be more later.